Okay, so if you've done the array video or looked at it, you'd have ended up with something like this. So it's 5 cubes that we then just change the sort of the height and the color on. Now, what I'm going to try and do now is for loops. In pretty much every programming language, the for loops will look the same, pretty much is the same. But it is also something that you'll come across very, very early on when you're learning a new language. But once you've done it once, actually it's good because the syntax for all of them is pretty much the same. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just firstly, at the moment, so we've got 5 cubes in our array. I'm just going to highlight, shift click and press Command and D. Command and then, just move and then Command and D again, and then Command and D. So I have 20 cubes. On Cube Manager, I'm just going to lock. So click on that padlock, so Cube Manager will always show. Right. Let's see what happens. Can I put 0 in there? Okay, worked. So I'm just going to 0. So the array of my cubes is now empty. And I'm just going to shift and click and drag these onto where it says my cubes. So now our array is 20 cubes long. So I'm going to go back to the code that we had from the array video. Now I've changed it a little bit. How it was before was I had cube height and then equals and then squiggly brackets, and you had a series of different heights. And this was an array of heights. So I'm just going to go back. So we want an empty array of height. I've added a new array called cube width, and also the cube color. I've just deleted all the colors, so it looked something like this, colors, blah blah. So now we're not starting. We've got 3. We've got an empty array there of cubes. Actually, it's not empty now because it has 20 cubes in it, as you can see there. But these 3 arrays, we are going to use these 3 arrays to change the cubes in this array. So we're going to change the height, the width, and the color. Okay, so the first thing when I click on one bit of code that we will need at some point is the length of that array. What you mean is how many cubes are in, how many cubes have we got? So we've got 20 cubes. So if I type my cubes and then dots and then type an L, you've got length. So this will tell us how many cubes are in our array. So if you said get my cubes.length, you would get the number 20 back, okay, because there's 20 cubes in that array. I'm just going to do // to comment out that at the moment. So, okay, so this is our start function here. So what we're going to do is actually is populate or fill up the height array and the cube height and the cube width and the cube color. But how we did it before, we did, it's kind of quite repetitive. So we would do my cubes 0 equals, or what we could do is do cube height, something like this. Okay, so we could say cube height 0, equals something like that. And then we would do cube height 1. Okay, cube height 1 equals 10. And you would do that for all 20 of these cubes. Now that would take a long time. Also, not only time consuming, but what happens if the number of cubes in our array goes up or goes down? We would then need to add or delete some of these arrays in the cube height. So that's why you would want a for loop to take away the repetition. Okay, so you've just in one line, you've got a loop which does all this for you. So what we've got then is this array called cube height that we want to fill up using a for loop. So now we've already almost declared the array here. We've said there is an array of integers, but we haven't said anything about the size of it. Okay, so this is where we'd have cube height, and then we need to say how big or how long it. Okay. So we're saying the cube height, so this array, it's an array of integers, and the size of it, the length or the size of it is going to equal however the length of the cubes, which is this bit of code here. So I'm just going to copy that and paste that. So we're saying the cube height, cube height is an array of integers, and the length of it is the same as however many cubes we've got. So at the moment, here we go, we've got 20 cubes. So that's what that dot length bit is doing. Now if you put, so you just put that bit inside the square brackets and then just a semicolon. So now the cube height, you know, is always going to be the same length as that array of cubes. So you can copy that, paste it, and then just take out width. So the width is going to be the same. So it's the cube width is going to be however many cubes you've got in that myCubes array. Okay, and then that's the same for color. So cube color equals myCubes dot, okay, dot length. Okay, lovely. So you can just save that, compile it. Now nothing will happen at the moment, but it's worth just compiling it if they go, lovely. So it's actually quite nice when you get an error because you realize you've done something wrong. And it's also worth compiling it, you know, just whenever you've done something, whenever you've changed something, just keep compiling it. So that's actually, cube color is actually an array of colors, not an array of integers. So, but if you didn't compile it now, but you compiled it later on, you'd have to trace back the errors. It's just worth doing it as you're going along. And also once you've done that, just go back to Unity and just, I'm just going to try and refresh this. So we should see, okay, that hasn't changed. Cube height and cube width. Okay. So I'm just going to save the scene as well. Okay. Okay. Now at the moment, what we've got is just one cube that has changed, but we shouldn't really see anything. I'm just looking at, okay, so all the variables there, there's the cubes, there's the cube width, and there's the cube heights. Okay. What I was just looking at actually, because you've got public here, that's why you see cube height and cube width. Because you have not got public for color, that's why you don't see cube color. Okay, but that's why you just see cube height and cube width. Okay, so now what we're going to try and do is actually use a for loop. Okay, I'm just going to comment that out a bit. So we're going to use a for loop to actually populate the cube height array. Okay. Okay, so you're going to put for. Normally it's I. You have just a random, almost like a random variable name. Sometimes it's X. So when you do a for loop, sometimes it says for X equals or for I equals. It doesn't make any difference. But what you do normally have is, so you've got for, you'd open a bracket, you'd have a closing bracket. So you would say for I equals 0. So you're starting at 0 because you're going through this whole array of heights, okay? So this cube array, actually, cube height now equals 20. There was 20 empty elements in that array. So that's what we're going to do now, is actually give them a value. So you start at 0. The next bit is where you're going to stop. So you need to stop when the for loop gets to the length, when it actually gets to the length of the array. Okay, so when you get to cube number 20 or empty slot number 20, then you're going to stop. So you keep going until I is less than, and it's cube height dot length. Okay, and then you just put another semicolon. So okay, now the final thing is just, and you'll see this on probably just about every language you'll see. This means go up by 1. Okay, so I++ generally means like kind of just increment or go up by 1. Okay, so you have the squiggly brackets, so whatever, this is inside the for loop. So what are you going to do? You're going to go through cube height. You're going to go through every element of cube height, okay, and you're going to set the value to a random value. Now, you have, so this means you're going to look inside the array of cube height, okay. The value inside that is going to be I, okay, because you're starting at 0, okay, and you keep going until you've reached the end, but every time you go through the array, you add 1 to it. So the first time that will be 0, okay, and then it's be 0, it's going to go through this loop again, and then it's going to add that to, it's going to change that to 1, okay, and then it's going to change it to 2 all the way up to 19. So you've got cube height. So what are you going to actually add in there? Well, what you could do, yeah, random, okay, yeah, dot range. So you're going to have a random number from, so if it's the, you could do 5 to, and if you look here, it says minimum or maximum. So I'm going to say random height between 5 and 10. Put the semicolon, and then just save that. Try to compile it. It should compile. Just try that again. Okay, that's actually good that this has happened. And I wasn't surprised because it actually kept changing it to if when I was typing it in. What we have to do is say, what is I? Is it a number or whatever? Is it a text field? It's an integer. Now that should solve that problem. And actually, if you look, is that going to solve it? Okay, good, did solve it. So if I go back to Google, for some, yeah, okay, so for Java, you need to put for integer I. I think whatever I've been using just now, I probably didn't need to do that. So it just, there are slight differences between certain languages, but now that's worked, you should be able to go back to Unity. And, okay. Click on game, I'll just try play. Okay. Now, nothing has happened yet. No one's on duty, I'm not on duty, but whoever should be on duty isn't. You know what I mean? I just... See what it's actually...